Good morning. Today we are going to be looking at solving polynomial equations. What we're going to do is, just like we have in the past, is factor them and then solve them. We may also have to use the quadratic formula while we're doing this, and then there will be a portion of the notes where you will get to use a graphing calculator. So you can pause the video right now if needed and go and grab a graphing calculator. So just a reminder, the factoring techniques that we have, the first thing that you need to do is factor out that greatest common factor. So look and see, do they have an x or a number variable that you can take out? If so, do that right away. The next item is to graph trinomials, and that is just using our x, and then if possible needing the box, which again you can use for the perfect squares here. The difference of squares, the factoring by grouping, remember, is with your box. So if you need to do that, we would make our box. And the sum of difference of cubes, that's that long equation, which is also on the board. So you can refer to that as we go through today. So this is a nice page you might want to have available when you are working on the homework later today, just as a reminder of the different ways that you have to solve, or to factor, excuse me. Okay, so let's actually go through a problem here. You'll notice it does say real or imaginary. So there are going to be times where if we have a square root of a negative where we're going to have imaginary numbers. Again, we wouldn't see those solutions on a graph, but they're there, and that's how we would add up to that degree, whether it's 3 or 4, as you can see in these examples. So let's get started looking at an example. So here, remember, we need to move the 3x over, so it equals 0. So we have 2x cubed minus 3x minus 5x squared. That will equal 0. So now as we go through this, we have to first look, can we take something out? And yes, we can take the x out. So that's what we're going to do first. So I'm going to divide everything by x. So now I have the x out here, and I'm left with 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. I could not take a number out or a constant because they didn't have anything in common. Now we make our x. And remember, we have to multiply these two numbers together, so we actually get negative 6 on the top, not negative 3. And you have negative 5. Factors we are going to get are going to be negative 6 and 1. You'll notice for this one, we do need to make the box because a is now 1. So let's just practice that again. This is your first and your last term, so we're going to have 2x squared, negative 3, and then the factors that we got right here go into our box. So negative 6x and 1x. We factor this, I'll take a 1x out here, a negative 3 there. Going across, we can take out a 2x, and 1x minus 3, they just have a 1 in common. So now we have the x still out front, and then the factors that we found are x minus 3 and 2x plus 1. Notice all of that is still equal to 0. So now we set each of those equal to 0 and solve. So we'll get x equals 0 as one of our answers. X minus 3 equals 0. Well, that means x equals 3. That's another answer. And then the next one, we will get a fraction here because we need to set 2x plus 1 equal to 0. So x is going to equal a negative half. Bring the 1 over and divide by 2. So we got 3 answers. Well, if you notice, our degree was 3 to start out with. So that looks great. Okay, so we know we are done. Now let's try the next one where we get 3x to the 4. Again, needs to be set equal to 0, so we will do that first. So we'll have 3x to the 4 minus 6x cubed plus 12x squared. This time, you should notice that we can actually take a 3 out, and we can take an x squared out. So we have both of those that we can pull out front. Remember, that doesn't disappear, that still needs to be out front. And then when we factor that, we are going to be left with x squared minus 2x plus 4. Okay. Now, as we look at this, we can make our x. Are there any factors of 4 that give us -2? There are not, because the factors we have are 4 and 1, or 2 and -2, or 2 and 2, and that doesn't work. So we have to use the quadratic for this. Okay, so we can set this first part equal to 0. Okay, and if you do that, x squared then equals 0. I divided by 3. X has to equal 0. Has a multiplicity of 2. That will come into play later. So that looks good. Now here, the quadratic formula, remember, is opposite of b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Again, I'll make sure that I have that on the board for you today, just so that you can see that and refer back to that. All right, so let's plug our numbers in. So opposite of b is going to be a positive 2, and then plus or minus, we'll have -2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4 all over 2 times 1. X then is 2 plus or minus. Remember, just plug these numbers into your graphing, or into your calculator, doesn't need to be graphing, and you'll get 4 minus 16, so we get -12. You notice that negative is under there, so we actually, if we graph this, we would not see these inner roots, our solutions on our graph. Remember though, you do need to break down 12. We get 4 and 3, breaks down to 2 and 2. So remember, that pair of 2's has a partner, it gets to come out of the square root, or the radical sign. So we're going to have 2 plus or minus 2i, because of the negative, square roots of 3 all over 2. You will notice these 2's can cancel and reduce, so I can take each of those away. They don't disappear, remember, they do become 1. So our answer is going to be 1 plus or minus I square roots of 3. There are 2 answers here because of that plus and minus. 2 from our multiplicity of 2 up there, that gives us 4. We are done. Okay, I do want to go through this and just talk through it a little bit more on here. I went pretty fast. Again, both of these had to be set equal to 0. You take out what you can, and then from there you decide, can you factor it like the first example, or do you need to use the quadratic equation like the second? So when you do that, you solve it after that, and you will get your answers. Just depending on, just as a reminder with that quadratic formula, you will need to reduce those numbers under that radical if needed, whether it's positive or negative. I still would like you to do that. You don't need to find the decimals unless you would like to. If we start graphing, then you would want to, but for now, we're just going to solve today. Now I'd like you to try these 2, so we can pause the video. You guys can take a time to try these, and then I will put the answers up for you. So just pause the video and try these. So here are your 2 answers that you should have gotten. The first one you notice is already factored, so you can set each of those equal to 0. Just a couple things to remember. When you are taking the square root, you need the plus or the minus on each of them. Since there was a negative here, you'll need the I. For the second one, again, you take out that x cubed once you set it equal to 0. The second part is not factorable, so then you use the quadratic formula, and that's what you get. 17 is prime. You can't reduce it. You are done. Hopefully that went well, and you'll get more practice later today in the homework. Now we're going to be graphing these quartics. So remember, we still can make our x. Everything has to be equal to 0, same thing, but we will notice something special about these when we're done. So we'll have x to the 4th minus 3x squared minus 4 equals 0. Now, for these, you cannot use the quadratic formula because it is x to the 4th, not x squared. So this has to be factorable for us at this point. So we will make our x, and we'll have -4, -3. So our factors are going to be -4 and 1. So we will have x squared minus 4 and x plus 1 equals 0. And now we solve this. X squared equals 4. So x is going to be plus or minus, don't forget that, the 2. Here we'll have squared equals -1. Take the square root of that, and you will get plus or minus 1i because of the negative. Okay, so there we go. Now let's look at the next one. It's already set equal to 0 for us. So now what we can do is make our x. For this one, we will get 24 and 11. So we're going to get 8 and 3 as our factors. This one, though, a is not 1, unfortunately, so we do need to make our box. So first one is the first thing in the equation. The 12, the last item in that equation, was at the bottom. And then our factors go in the middle. Now, we have to remember, though, this time this is an x squared. So this is x squared, not x. That does make a difference. And again, back in that last problem, that's why we used x squared. That middle term's an x squared, not an x this time. So going across this way, I can take a 2x squared out. They are both even. Largest x is the 2. Going up and down, I can just take an x squared out. Again, these multiply with 2x to the 4th, so that looks good. Here I can take a 4 out. Here I can take a 3 out. So our factors are 2x squared plus 3 and x squared plus 4. That equals 0. Now we solve this, so we get 2x squared equals -3. Because again, it's equal to 0. I didn't skip that step, I apologize. And then x squared is going to equal a -3/2. And so x is going to equal plus or minus the square root of 3 over 2, and then I usually don't like the square root of that 2 on the bottom, but for today, since I am done, let's just leave it. Tomorrow we'll come back to that one, and we'll deal with that tomorrow. But for today, you can leave it like that. X squared here is going to equal a -4, also a negative. So x will be plus or minus 2i. Square root of 4 is 2. We get the I. It's negative. You'll notice on each of these, what's special about these is because we had that x to the 4th, we'll be taking the square root on both of these. And so you have that plus or minus. So there are still 4 answers there, but you will notice that you do need to take the square root. All right, I'm going to have you try these two. So pause the video again and try these two, and then you can check your answers with mine. So here are those answers that you should have gotten for A and B here. You notice that first one you had to set equal to 0. You do need to factor it. You can't just take the 4th root of 16 because you do need to get those imaginary numbers. Your calculator would not give you those or the negative from the 2 also. So you need all 4 there, answers. Part B, you make your x. You can factor it. You notice I just left the square roots of 3 and 2. I didn't make the decimals. You can if you want, or you can stop there. All right, next one's here. What we're looking at is this is where we're going to use the sum or difference of cubes. So we have to use those formulas. I do have them on the board for you to look at as you're going through, and I'll also write them on here. You remember that second part is never factorable, so we will need to use the quadratic formula with these. So these do take a few steps. We'll need lots of room. Hopefully we have enough room to solve these. All right, let's get started. So here, A is going to be 2x. Take the cube root of that. B is going to be 1. We will get a minus b then, and a squared plus ab plus b squared. Again, that formula is on the board for you if you need it. All right, so when we do this, we are going to have 2x minus 1. And then we are going to have 4x squared, because remember we are squaring the 2x. So both parts, and you guys did great on the quiz when you had to do that before. Then we multiply those together, so we get another 2x times 1, which is 2x, and 1 squared is 1. So that is what we are going to get when we factor as we go through today. With this, let's set this equal to 0 up here so that we can set it equal to 0 down here. All right, so now what we need to do is this part, we can just set equal to 0. So 2x is going to equal a half, or x is going to equal a half. Okay, Just remember that quadratic is not factorable, so we have to use the quadratic here. So I'm going to just start that right away. So the opposite of b is going to be -2 plus or minus. I'm going to square that 2 squared minus 4 times 1. That all divided by 2 times 4. So we're going to get -2 plus or minus. Square root here, we're going to have 4 minus 16. So again, we get a -12 all over 8. That we can reduce to -2 plus or minus 2i square roots of 3 all over 8. One last thing here, those 2's and 8's are all even, so we can reduce this. I'm going to have to move it over here. So we get -1 plus or minus I square roots of 3 all over 4. There are 2 answers because of that plus or minus plus that half just gives us our 3. All right, so let's try another one here just to go through the process. This time when we factor it, it's positive, so it's going to be a plus b, and then a squared minus ab plus b squared. Cube root of 27 is 3, so here we get 3x. Don't forget that x. Some of you, when we did the quiz on this, were forgetting that letter. That again, you have to take the cube root of the x cubed also and get x. And then here we're going to get 2. So remember, those are just being cubed. Is kind of what it looks like. All right. So this is A, this is B. Now we just get to plug it in. So we are going to have 3x plus 2, and then we're going to have 9x squared. Remember to square the number and the letter. And then if we multiply those together, we get -6x. So the negative from the formula is 6x when you multiply them. Plus 4, 2 squared is 4. Again, let f is equal to 0. First part we can solve. So here we are just going to get -2/3. Move the 2 over, divided by 3. Other part, we have to use the quadratic. It never ever factors, so don't even take time to try. All right, opposite of -6 is 6, plus or minus. In here, we're going to take the square root of 6, -6 squared, minus 4 times 9 times 4. All of that divided by 2 times 9. So, under your square root, if you plug that in, you're going to get -108. So we're going to have 6 plus or minus the square root of -108 divided by 18. So if you break down 108, to save time, I do know that 36 goes into that. Not that you have to, but I'm just going to try to save space and time here. So I get a pair of 6's. So x is going to equal 6 plus or minus 6i square roots of 3 all over 18. Again, we notice 6 goes into all of those, so I'm going to get 1 plus or minus I square roots of 3 over 3. Again, I will show that here. These are all divisible by 6. Okay. All right, so again, what you need to remember with these is the formula, which will always be given. Okay, so being able to plug that in, and then from there, being able to use the quadratic formula to get your answers. So again, it's a lot of stuff, a lot of work to do, but you have done it before, so I think it is doable there. All right, so on the next page, I have lots here for you to try. Let's just do A. I don't know that we'll have room to do B. So we can cross out B here, and let's just look at A and solve that one. So again, you can pause the video and try. So you do notice for this one, you have to move the 1 over, and then use the formula for the quadratic. It turned out pretty nice. You did not have to reduce anything. We just had to remember to put that I out in front because of the -3. Just a comment about B and C there. If you were to solve these, you would want to distribute everything through, combine it, set it equal to 0, and then go from there. But for time-wise, we are going to not use those today. The next 2 slides have lots of extra practice problems for you to do, so I'd like you to pause the video right now and try the next 2 slides. I do have the answers available, so when you are done, you can unpause it and check your answers. So again, pause your video right now to check them, or to try the problems. So now that you have finished those, here are the answers. So you notice for the first one, it was a quartic. You had to move the 4 over, make your x, and then solve. Again, you should get 4 answers because the degree is 4. So don't forget those plus and minuses as you are taking the square root of each of those. And then on the next one, you notice it's an x cubed, but we can take an x out, and then from there you can make your x to factor it. It's just a trinomial, and you will get 3 answers, which is perfect because the degree was 3. That's similar to what you have been doing the last few days. The last 2 were all factor by grouping because you had 4 terms for each of them. So again, it did take a lot of work for both of them. You could factor out something. The first one, you could take a 2x out. The second one, just a 3. You notice I divided that 3 out right away and got rid of it. Any 0 divided by anything is just going to be 0. So that was kind of nice there. You could just get rid of that. Then I'll scroll down here, and you can see you made a box for each of them. On each side here, and then you want to, once you have factored it, set each of those items equal to 0. This one had a degree of 4, so there are 4 answers with that plus or minus 3. This one just had a degree of 3, so you add the negative 4 here and you set that equal to 0, and then your plus or minus 1. So the only part I didn't have you practice was the sum and difference of cubes, which you can also do in the homework there. And so again, that will use the quadratic formula. So both of those are on the board for you, the sum and difference of cubes formulas and the quadratic, so that should help. And we're going to stop there. I'm going to have you work on the homework and see where you get. There is a chance that you might watch more videos, but I have a feeling this took quite a while. So hopefully it makes a little bit of sense, and answers will be hanging up, so feel free to check them. And again, help each other out. If one of you knows exactly what to do, please explain it to your classmates so that they can understand it too. Thanks, and I will see you guys tomorrow.